welcome you, and Christina welcomes you to the fall season of the Pen Parentis Literary Salons. Hello out there. Very quick shout out hellos right off the top to our gorgeous tonight donors, which are Donna, Ellen, David, Nancy, Gloria, Betsy, Eve, Mia, and Cindy. And in the front row, who is it? Clyde! We, of course, also thank our sponsors, NISCA, the LMCC, the NEA, and the DeGroat Foundation, and newly, the Poetry Foundation. You guys, we have poets tonight, and we have non-poets tonight, and it's going to be very exciting. Stay with us. We're still collecting people. Make sure you say hi in the chat so we know you're there. Drop your name, drop where you're from. We want to know, like, who we're reaching to tonight. Also, our sponsors for tonight are Dreamers Creative Writing Magazine, who are also the print sponsors of our fellowship. So our fellow just got awarded. In November, you can meet her and hear her winning work. And then Dreamers Creative Writing will be publishing her amazing piece. It's actually really, really good. And then our super sponsor for tonight are Butterdocs. So I will probably tell you more about Butterdocs later, because it's kind of a really cool new competitor to Google Docs, and it's a competitor to Scrivener. And they're launching it just for creative writers to collaborate on creative pieces. So it's actually a really cool thing. I'll tell you about it later. But right now, let us bring it on to, let us first of all say hi. I'm Emma DeVoe, founder of Pen Parentis. This is Christina Chu. This is Christina Chu. She's a curator of the salons and the president of the board. Hello, we need board members. I'm doing this. And then the other thing I want to tell you is that Pen Parentis is a 501c3 nonprofit. Yes, you can get tax deductions for all of the donations that you're making tonight and every night. And our mission is to help writers stay creative after they have kids. So we present you with extraordinarily talented and amazing writers that happen to have kids. Let's hear about some of those that we're going to hear tonight. Christina.
Hello, everyone. First, thanks for joining us. It's a really great way to start the season. We're going to talk about beauty tonight, which is, I think, we don't get enough of. So I am really excited to hear what our authors have to say. And we have a really special lineup. So you're really lucky. And we here at Pen Parentis are uber excited and lucky. And hello to all of you.
Oh, look at you, Bonnie from Denver, Colorado.
Yes.
And Sandell, it's so nice to see you again.
New Hampshire.
Woo! And Gloria from
Chicago.
Chicago. Hey, you're new, I think. Good. Welcome. So glad you came. Yeah.
So all of you, if you have questions or whatever while you're watching, just write in and we will respond. Okay. Yeah. So like I said, our first salon will be, and we have 3 beauties for you. We have Ronna Wineberg. She's the author of Artifacts and Other Stories. It's her new collection of, and it's longlisted for the Shelf Unbound Best Indie Book Competition and a finalist for the Eric Hoffner Book Award. She's the author of 9 Facts That Can Change Your Life, On Bitter Sweet Place, and Second Language as well. So this is her, 4th book coming up? Oh my God. And Ronna's been with us before and she's amazing. Everyone, please say hello to Ronna.
Hello to everyone, and thank you for having me.
Our second reader will be Ching-In Chen. They are a genderqueer Chinese-American poet and multi-genre writer. They are the author of Recombinant, The Heart's Traffic, and To Make Black Paper Sing. Chen is also the co-editor of the anthologies The Revolution Starts at Home, Confronting Intimate Violence Within Activist Communities, and Here's a Pen, an anthology of West Coast Kundiman poets. They are Callaloo, Kundiman, and Lambda Fellow. And now, as well, our final and our first reader will be Annie Wenstrup. She's a Dena'ina poet who lives in Fairbanks, Alaska. She's a 2022 Stone Coast graduate. She's also a Smithsonian Arctic Studies Fellow, an inaugural Indigenous Nations Poetry Fellow, and a Story Knife Fireweed Fellow. Her work can be found or is forthcoming in Poetry Northwest, the Ina Review, After, Palette, and Runoff, and the Star Bassoon. Everyone, please welcome our authors.
Yay, authors! Yay, authors! And also, hello, Charles Gerber. Hello, Lori in Indiana. And hello, Jack David Marcus on the Upper West Side. We love you, New Yorkers. And seriously, if you do you authors know any of these people? You want to say hi?
I do. Hello. Hi to all of you who you just mentioned.
See,
So-
we're so
Oh,
happy
hey,
you're there.
Chris.
Oh, Chris from Naples, Maine. See, this is so fun. It's like you're all in the room. Yay. Okay. So wait. First reader is who's first
Annie.
reader?
First reader is Annie. And
Annie.
everyone, please welcome Annie. She is not just an incredible poet, but an incredible person. She does so much in the literary world, and she just gives so much. So everyone, please welcome Annie Wenstrup.
That's not me. I'm switching us. Hang on. Wait, don't start, Annie. Wait. Let me get you on.
Yeah.
There you are. Yay.
Ah,
This is why
thank
we need a
you, and thank
producer.
you so much for that introduction, and thank you for having me. I thought I would share two poems from my manuscript with you. My manuscript looks at the intersection of cultural paradigms for like visual aesthetics and navigating those as somebody who's both Denina and white. You can't see him, but Tigger's joining us for the reading, my golden retriever. So that's what's going on in the
Like
background
growling.
here. Yeah. And so, kind of like the framework for thinking about these is understanding that the speaker in the poem is somebody who's mixed race and understanding that like white supremacy culture is the framework for how the speaker engages with the world and navigating being seen by it. Ghost pixels. I've archived beauty all my life. News anchors introduce blue women and blue girls into my home. Their faces imprint on my eyes. Their ghosts float through my mind. The anchor's voice echoes in my sleep. It cries, missing, scandal, dead. No corpses are displayed on screen. Dead girls and women are not art. Life observes the living. Still death echoes behind blue smiles. Girls become women, transfix their bodies into moths. They float, open and shut their wings, their faces. The TV screens broadcast their faces. They smile and wave even in death. Their bodies move like buoys floating across sets. A story, never their lives, breaks like waves. Anchors place women on ticker tape shoulders that echo the news. The newscaster's voice echoes, missing, scandal, dead, as screens shuffle faces. How beautiful, how lovely the women are. If missing, I hope they're not dead. But when they die, we'll dissect their lives into made-for-TV docudramas, like bodies preserved in formaldehyde. Blonde hair floats on screen, while pale, blue-eyed women echo here. Some say it's an aesthetic choice in life to choose who echoes, who to efface. And sometimes I envy the beautifully seen dead women. I, a green woman among blue women. It's not that I want to live blue. I would not spend my life floating behind a screen. I don't wish for that death. It's only I've never heard an echo of anything but blue. The silence effaces green memories. It hollows my life. The absence becomes my body. A bell echoes another story. Ring it. Ring it. How else can I face what's become of my own silence?
Beautiful.
Very good.
And then a shorter one. The parade. The women walk through the door. The parade master does not, will not speak to us. Here is the show. Here are the women. We don't need to be told that we're freaks. Why else would we be here? We run the gauntlet between forlorn trees, their bark like a weighted glove. They mirror our bodies back to us. Bereft of mirrors, we rely on the naked trees to remind us of our forms. Perpendicular to the red soil, we're paraded on. The door is ajar. It is ajar like the ones I kept fireflies in. No holes for air. The door is a bridge from one life to a hunger. The door lives in the distance of Daphne's footsteps between prayer and laurel. See her leading the parade. See her gilded leaves crowning our heads. Our eyes forward. We are marching. We remember Lot's wife. We've already salted our vegetables, assaulted our stomachs. The parade master keeps our time. Her baton a carrot, and her carrot beats us forward. We are marching until our footsteps whittle us through another door.
Wow.
So
Gorgeous.
beautiful, Annie.
Gorgeous.
Thank
I
you.
love the term. The door is a jar that's a firefly jar. Oh my God.
The door's ajar. A
It's
bridge
just-
from a life to a hunger. Wow.
It's so beautiful. Oh.
Wow. Thank you so much, Annie. Before we go, one question.
Oh, hey,
and
Asa.
I'll be
Yay.
Hi. I'll be asking all the authors really. So you choose which salon you want to be in, and it's based really. We kind of curate by theme here. So, how did this particular salon resonate with you? How did you put yourself here?
Oh, well, first, hi, Angela. Asa. It's so good to see you guys. I thank you for the good timing, too.
Hi,
That's a
Andrew
question.
in Sydney. So far away. Thanks for getting up.
But, I think, right, that question of what visual aesthetics do in terms of power, in terms of ability to navigate the world, depending on how we're read by other people, like whether we're coded as beautiful or ugly or other, right? Those things, like, there's such a focus of my writing, and my entire project tilts around it. And so it seemed maybe like the one I connected with most.
That's wonderful.
Marvelous.
Thank you.
Marvelous.
Well, how about the Ronna and Ching-In? Do you want to just chime in quickly before we move on and hear you read as well?
About beauty.
Yeah.
I felt that in my book, Artifacts and Other Stories, beauty is a part of it. Beautiful surroundings. There's a story where a man collects artifacts that are very beautiful and that has a meaning to him and the people that he's with. And also there's the idea of being attracted to someone else, beauty that you see in another person, either inside or, how a person looks and how that affects a relationship. So I felt it reflected some of the stories in my book.
Wonderful. Ching-In, how about you? I know we pulled you in pretty late in the scheme of things. Does it resonate with you?
Well, I actually, so I'm writing about really challenging things, and I had to think about it and think about, where does beauty show up even in difficult times? So it was a challenge, but I appreciate it because I think I don't always think about that question.
Interesting.
Wonderful.
We're going to get so into this. This is going to be fun.
Yeah,
love
and
thoughtful
I have to say, like, recently things have been a little bit, in life a little difficult for me. And when I was like, oh my God, the reading's coming up, it's going to be tomorrow, I thought to myself, oh my God. And there was a moment I felt like I actually almost got teary-eyed. I was like, thank God we have this beautiful moment, like I can look forward to, and here you guys are.
Yeah.
So
nice.
Thank you for being here, honestly. Okay. Ching-In will be reading last, but our next reader is Ronna Wineberg. She's the author, like I said, of Artifacts and Other Stories. It's her new story collection. It's longlisted for the Shelf Unbound Best India Indie Book Competition and a finalist for the Eric Hoffner Book Award. 9 Facts That Can Change Your Life, a collection of short stories, which received an honorable mention for the Eric Hoffner Book Award on Bittersweet Place, a novel, winner of the Shelf Unbound Best Indie Book Competition, and a debut collection of stories, second language, winner of the New Rivers Press Many Voices Project Literary Competition, and the runner-up for the Reform Judaism Prize for Jewish Fiction. Oh my God, the honors and awards just go on and on and on and on and on, which is so amazing. Her stories have appeared in Michigan Quarterly Review, North Dakota Quarterly, Colorado Review, American Way, and other literary journals, and have been broadcast on NPR. She was awarded, that's so amazing. She was awarded a fellowship in fiction from the New York Foundation for the Arts, a scholarship in fiction to the Breadloaf Writers Conference, and residencies to the Ragdale Foundation and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. She's the founding fiction editor of the Bellevue Literary Review. She was born in Chicago, attended the University of Michigan, and received a BA degree. She received a JD from University of Denver College of Law. We see a lot of authors who start off as lawyers and then go into writing. And she's also taught writing and has written blogs for Psychology Today. She lives here in New York City. Everyone, please welcome Ronna Wineberg. Hi, Ronna.
Hi, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me here. And I'm a little handicapped because I can't see the chat, but I'm so happy for everyone I know who came, who Milda mentioned, and other people who I don't know are here, but I'm happy you're here. I'm going to read from a story from the collection Artifacts and Other Stories. I'm going to read from the beginning of the story. And the book is about the coming together and breaking apart of relationships and the joys and limitations of love. The story I'm going to read from is entitled Woman Wanted for Travel, No Romance. 1. Eli Grossman had lived a good life. He'd been a grocer and had worked hard before he'd sold the business and retired. At 82, he was in relatively good health, despite the aches in his knee and shoulder, a few minor operations he'd endured, and the incremental loss of energy that came with age. He prided himself on his strength, independence, and stubbornness. He'd gone to college after World War II and won his wife's hand. He had turned his grocery into a specialty store and pushed to buy a house in a good Chicago suburb so their kids could go to the best public schools. He'd even fought for and kept his sanity when Edith had died 6 years ago. His son Jonathan, who lived in Telluride, had called every day back then, encouraging Eli to build another life when Eli had given up hope. There had been tension between them for years, but Jonathan put that aside for a time in the wake of his mother's death. And miraculously, Eli had found a new life. He was traveling to Florida next week with a woman he thought he loved, a woman he was going to ask to marry him, Irma Leonard. Eli didn't use the word love carelessly. He loved his wife, Edith, a love that shrank or stretched depending on the year. When she died, he'd fallen into a depression, but his will to survive had burst to the surface. Friends had told him about online sites where you could post a personal ad. Eli was old-fashioned. You didn't just go shopping for love as if it were a pair of socks. But he started reading the ads in the local newspaper, and 3 years ago, he'd placed his own. Wanted. What did he want? He wanted Edith back and life as it had been before. He tried different combinations of words. He settled on this. Woman wanted for travel, no romance, widower, age 79, seeks female, age 70 to 77, for travel and conversation. He didn't want complications. It was too late for romance. What could he offer a 70-year-old woman? Companionship, he decided, not a small thing. Besides, he had opinions about the world and wasn't bad looking. He had a respectable head of gray hair, though his hairline was receding. His eyes were blue, his nose long. He'd never finished college, but he'd taken classes at the community college after he retired. To his surprise, he received 10 responses. Irma was the only one who had invited him to her apartment for dinner. She enjoyed cooking. Did he mind? He drove downtown to the sleek high-rise on Diversey, parked, and rode in the elevator to the 12th floor. The apartment was elegant. Edith would have said so. Irma was attractive, with wavy blonde hair, blue eyes, a warm smile, a confidence. She wore a blue silk dress that draped her slim figure. They sat across from each other at the small dining room table. At dinner, he asked, "So, do you have any health problems?" He didn't want to bring someone into his life he'd have to take care of. "I was going to ask you," Irma replied. "My birthday was last month, and I'm 70, but thank God healthy. Oh, I have shoulder problems sometimes. Years ago, I had my appendix out." She laughed gaily. "It was an emergency, but I found I could live without an appendix." "You can live without a lot of things you thought you needed," he said. He laughed too. Then he became serious. "As for me," he went on, "I'm in pretty good health. My cholesterol is good. Even my heart isn't so bad." He didn't mention the melanoma the doctor had removed last year, or the arthritis. "The heart is the most important," Irma said. "You look like you have a good heart. My husband died because of his heart at 63. He was young," Eli said. Whole lives were reduced to this, he thought. A sweeping description, and a lifetime was summarized and dismissed. And I'll end there.
Yay.
So, Ron, I have a question, and I think you are a really good person to answer this. So you write, and you're constantly writing, and you're editing for the review, and you're working. How do you structure things so that you actually write things that actually become so meaningful?
Well, I try to structure writing time. I try to, block out hours when I'll be able to write. But it takes a long time. This is actually a long story, and I just read the first part of it because I, was mindful of the time. But I mean, it really takes a long time to bring a story to the point where it's ready for people to hear it or read it. So this story has gone through, many incarnations. I wrote it, and then when I was putting together the book, I decided to put it in, and I had to block out time to revise it, and then I decided to change the ending. So it's gone through, many different permutations. So it's a question of working on a story again and again and again, and looking at it with fresh eyes, and then revising it many times.
So this is a question just quickly for everyone. So when it comes to revising, how do you know when to stop? Do you have a moment really when, and this is, I'm really curious about poetry, because how do you know how you can overwrite, you can wreck something. So how do you know what that moment is? Do you have to kind of like grow that muscle, or how do you know? Or do you have other readers, or how does that work?
Are you asking the poet? You want to talk to the poet?
I'm asking you first.
Oh, you're asking me first. Well, it's really hard to. It's easy in a way to almost over revise, to kind of take out good things. So I know when something needs to be revised, and for me, it helps if I put it aside and then go back to it. And when I have fresh eyes, I look at something with fresh eyes. I have a better idea of how much more I have to revise. And sometimes I sort of finish a story and I think, this sounds right. I couldn't really tell you why, but it just sounds right to me. And whatever problem I was trying to fix, I feel like I fixed it. And, then I might have friends read it, or I might even send it to a journal, and people might make comments about that and might give me some suggestions. But I don't always take the suggestions for revisions, because if it seems to work for me, not in a defensive way, but the suggestions have to really speak to me, and I have to feel that it really serves the story. So it's kind of a process. It's actually just a question of sound. You know, how does it sound? How does it work? It's just something almost instinct.
Is that true with you, Annie?
I think there's both instinct, right? Like, I think there's like, well, for me, it's a level of honesty of saying, like, right, I took out the thing that I loved, but that didn't actually further the poem. And usually that's like the hardest part of revision. I think the other part too is I'm really lucky in that I have a lot of people who will read my work with me, and like I like working collaboratively. Some of them are here, and some of them helped with the poems that you heard tonight. And I think I learn a lot about where I need to go with revision when I'm in conversation with other writers. I always write like, you ever see like the memes that go around about like the drawing of the horse that's super elaborate and Baroque, and then the guy with the banister with the little horse duct taped to it. I feel like that's kind of what happens with my draft, right? Like there's what's in my head, but then there's what's actually on the page. And when I'm in that process of conversation with another writer, sometimes they can tell me like, hey, your duct tape is showing. You need to pull it out and start over again.
That's lovely. I love those little phrases that make us like pay attention.
Right?
That's great.
And sometimes too, right? Like you get this real gift where somebody has a question about your work where you're like, wait, I didn't write that, but I should have.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to return to, because, right, like my friends are smarter readers than I am as a writer. And so it's a way of deepening that conversation and of returning to the work, especially when it started to feel stagnant.
I like that sort of including the reader as a maybe wise person who's helping. That's a nice, as opposed to like, they wanted me to do something else. That's nice. It's a much more open way to look at your critics or your readers. Before we go back to Ching-In, I want to tell Ronna, because she can't see the chat, that Sandel Moore said, Ronna, I love your characters. And that, Carol West just got her book. And also there's a YouTube user, we don't know who she is because she's not logged in, but she said, hearing is so different from reading. And I just think that's, isn't that beautiful? Like,
that is beautiful.
It's so cool, right? Anybody recognize her?
I don't know. That's a wonderful thing to say, because really stories and I guess poetry too, there's the oral tradition. And I think that's true. When you hear things, it's different from reading.
Yeah. So I just now we can go back to the question.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Carol, for being here.
And finish out the trio.
Yes. Ching-In, how about you?
I also operate by intuition, and I actually learn a lot by reading my work aloud. And there's obviously added pressure when there's an audience. So sometimes I can hear, where things are clunky, or I like trip over them, or in terms of like just how people respond. And I always learn about my work that way. And I also, like to give it space and time to breathe.
That's a good answer. I really can't. I can't wait to hear you read. So, without ado, let us hear Ching-In Chen.
Wait, are we doing the long bio? Yes.
Yes, I'm doing the long bio.
Good, I love it.
And it's very long. So
I know, like I'm going to take a little water.
And oftentimes I see this whenever I see long bios. I'm like, and then I start tripping over words, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to take my time. So Ching-In Chen is a genderqueer Chinese American poet, yay, and multi-genre writer. They are the author of Recombinant. That's the most recent book, correct? The Heart's Traffic, and To Make Black Paper Sing. Chen is also the editor of the anthologies The Revolution Starts at Home, Confronting Intimate Violence Within Activist Communities, and Here is a Pen, an anthology of West Coast Kundiman poets. They are Callaloo, Kundiman, and Lambda Fellow. Their poem play, The Geisha Author Interviews. I'm so curious about this. I have to ask you when we talk. Also from the Heart's Traffic, was nominated for a John Cobble Short Play Award. Chen has also been awarded residencies and fellowships from Soul Mountain Retreat, Vermont Studio Center, and Fine Arts Works Center, the Payton Institute, Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, Malay Colony for the Arts, the Norman Mailer Center, Ragdale Foundation, and Can Surratt. Chen has taught in Sam Houston State University's English department.
Hey, my brother went there. Just saying. Sorry.
And currently teaches in the English and creative writing programs at the University of Washington, Bothell. They presently serve as the staff advisor for Clamor, the Bothell campus's literary magazine, alongside Amaranth Borsuk. Everyone, please welcome Ching.
Yay! Hi.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's really great to hear everyone's work. Before I proceed, let me introduce my disruptive coworkers. I never can tell with them, and at the end of the day, sometimes they have opinions about, you're online. I don't want you to be online. So
They're like backup singers.
no. This disruptive coworker number 1 is Pepper.
Pepper!
And this disruptive coworker number 2 is Benny. Okay. Yes. And I'll preface this, my reading. I'm going to read you a really short piece from a craft essay called Leaping to the Next Cloud, because it tells you what the project is. And I'm going to read just a small excerpt of a longer creative nonfiction piece, which, because of the topic, I'm reading like 3/4 of the way through. Yeah. So, and I've never read this to anyone before.
Yay! We're ready. We're ready.
And I'm sorry. As you can see, my disruptive coworkers. All right. Leaping. Hold on. I'm sorry. Hey. Come here. Okay. Leaping to the next cloud. This summer, I am writing about my trans family, me, my partner, and our 2 kids, for the first time for the goal of publication, and I'm terrified. I want to write about my trans family because I see so little represented of our lives in print that resonates with our everyday living, and because I know that our bodies are on the line right now. Because of this, I know that I want to write creative nonfiction. I need witnesses to our very real lives. I know that I can trust this process, following a line of conversation, a memory which surfaces, a brief moment between 2 trans siblings. Despite the pressure of representation and visibility, I want to write something which feels messy, which can slip between moments and wander between the lines. I desire a flexible shape which can travel with us, jumping from stone to stone. And the excerpt of the essay I'll read is called Outlawed Kin. And I'll just say that the front end of the essay is about, a lot of it is about the challenges of, not having any models. I met my partner's kids when they were 3 and 6. Now they're 14 and 17. And where we are in the essay is when the older kid is going to come out. At the end of the summer, right after she said goodbye to us, Em released a video of her playing Minecraft with the main character ripping up floorboards at the end of the quest to reveal a trans flag. I wondered how her larger extended family would receive the information, since Cassie, who's my partner, had not been supported in her gender transition. I was pleasantly surprised to hear that Em received a lot of support and care. A few days later, we heard that Em had chosen a new name for herself, Myra. Myra's coming out as a trans girl, and later Clover coming out as non-binary a year later, forced me to recalibrate my sense of the family that I was in, since all of us now identified as trans and non-binary. Looking back, we had often referred to both kids as a collective, the boys. We asked them to use the boys' or men's restroom and assumed that they were male. Even though we were both trans, we didn't give space for them to choose how they wanted to identify and present to the world. I was so concerned to make sure they knew how to address Cassie properly as a trans woman and understand what it was like to be the kid of a trans woman, and secondarily, that they knew that I was genderqueer and non-binary, that I didn't consider the possibility that they were trans and non-binary themselves. The kids reminded me of how gender binary my worldview was. Myra, for example, grumbled about how we would say good girl to our dog, Pepper, here, and good boy to our dog, Benny. Why can't you say good dog, she grumbled. And we had persistently gendered her as male without giving space for her to choose until she told us otherwise, despite both of us identifying as trans. Another hot summer day. We're nearing the end of C&M's time in the Pacific Northwest. I'm in the car on parent duty, Myra in the front seat and Clover in the back seat. It's the first summer that Myra has lived with us since coming out, and she's beginning to shine. Cassie recently took her thrift shopping for her birthday. She modeled the clothes in the living room, twirling around and smiling. Now she's wearing one of her thrifted skirts paired with black combat boots, ready for the LGBTQIA youth social. And that's where I'll pause.
Wow.
That's great.
I wanted to.
Sorry. Hey.
The dogs are happy. So something that you said resonated with me with something that we were saying sort of in the green room about being a writer who doesn't feel seen. And as a writer who doesn't feel seen, it occurred to me while you were reading that when you don't have a model to model yourself after, you have to become the model for others that are like you, which is a really interesting, I don't know, it's just like I love that. I just made that up and I like it. I want to think through this, like as a sort of philosophy, like, you know, the generation of trailblazers who have had to model what it means to be trans in an out world, as opposed to being a hidden trans person. And that's just a really fascinating, I don't know. To me, it's just an interesting thought.
I you know, what I really love here is your honesty about how you had never considered that like them, it for them, right? And that's so much about parenting, isn't it? It's like all these blind spots that like you're so concerned, you want them to be aware, to know, and then they're the ones who are like, well, take a look. You know, I just think that is so amazing, and the fact that you're writing about it now, and really giving voice to that for, you know, all the people out there who basically haven't really had a voice, right? And I feel like people feel more comfortable seeing themselves when it's actually there. Like I never even considered being a writer until I came across one of Gish Jen's books, Typical American, many, many years ago. And it was the first time I heard, oh, a Chinese person can actually write a book. Like, you know, people might actually want to read it, like be interested. And so I think that is one of the beauties of writing and art in general. And I'm really excited about that. How about your kids, though? Like, how do your kids feel about being written about and talked about? Have you had issues about that, or have you talked to them about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as you read in my bio, I'm published more as a poet, and I tend to be more of an experimental writer. So, and less narrative. So a lot of times it's more about evoking the feelings. So I have written about my family before, but not so transparently in this way where you can kind of connect the dots more clearly. So I think I have asked for permission before, specifically from the younger kid. I think one time I published a photo that they had taken, so I needed permission. But for this, for this piece, the second piece, Outlaw Kin, that I read to you was the first. Right now, I only have 3 pieces. It's the first one that I wrote, and I had to ask them for permission and have this conversation with them about, you know, hey, I'm gonna write. I want to write about our family, and specifically right now, you know, trans youth are being really targeted, and so just having to have that conversation with them and like, how comfortable are you with me writing about certain things. I gave them pseudonyms for that reason. And then I wrote a first draft, and then I sent it to them and I had them read it. Actually, the older kid specifically gave really good feedback. And that's where the part about the dogs, she reminded me about the part with the dogs that came in. And they were both really cool with it, which I was kind of surprised because there are parts of the essay which, like are about, maybe like difficult moments or like things that are maybe hard in a family. And I thought they might be not be okay with me including that. But for the most part, they were very nonchalant, in a very teenage way. And like, what's the big deal? So yeah, it was a really interesting process that I was very anxious about, but it ended up not being as difficult as I imagined it might be.
I wanted to show you, Taylor Hobbs wrote in, your kids are so lucky to have a parent willing to reflect and examine the collective experiences within the family. It can be such a difficult thing to do. I just wanted to make sure you saw that. And Annie is going to read her own comment, which I love that nobody wants to interrupt anybody. As always being really, really careful. You guys don't have to be careful. Annie, you're welcome to jump in and tell Chingy what you think of their writing.
I was just struck by the amount of generosity in your writing, and also just really treasured your writing contains the belief that you can write a space that's expansive enough to contain you and your beloveds. Like, I think that's really, I don't know, there is something really powerful about the fact that like you can make space in this narrative that's being constructed to hold like something that's complicated but built on love. And I just admire that so much.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. I mean, I think that is why I love writing. It's because I feel like we can all imagine a world, where we belong and, we can have space for ourselves.
Nice.
And it's actually really a brave thing to write about your family and, your own particular struggles. Everyone has struggles. These are yours, but to make them visible for the world, it takes a certain amount of courage in a way.
Thank you.
Definitely.
And I mean, in a way, that's one of the nice things about fiction is that you can deal with, maybe complicated issues and difficult feelings, but put them into a fictionalized context so that the feelings are authentic, but the fact pattern isn't.
That's a common occurrence, and we do these accountability groups for writers who have kids, and they are small groups and they meet every week, and so people get to know each other in their groups and they become very comfortable. And one of the things that comes up over and over and over again are people writing memoirs where they bump up against family, and they bump up against like, how do I say something that's so important in my identity or in my life or just in my history? How do I say that without hurting the person that I'm writing about? And I know like all of you have written about personal issues in your own writing. How did you address that? And I mean, Chingy is very clear that, they talk to their kids directly. Are there other relationships that you've had where you maybe had another way of doing it? Because obviously like bring it to them and let them edit it or read it or, say no, that's one way. But we here at Pen Parentis, we like to give like a million ways because there's no right way. We don't think there's a right way to do anything. There's your way. There's the way that feels best for you. So
Annie,
let's have some ideas.
Annie, do you have any ideas? Like do you have this issue at all, first of all, with your kids?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking
Or
not so
others.
much about my kids. My kids are they're still younger. They're 6 and, they're 7 and 9. And they are, my oldest is pretty clear that he's a really private person. Maybe 2 years ago, I was getting ready to post a picture of him on Facebook and it was just going to be shared with friends and family. And he was really upset. He told me no. And I said, but it's okay. It's just going to friends and family. There aren't any strangers. And he told me, well, they're not strangers to you, but they're strangers to me.
Wow.
And so like, I
pretty
felt like
clear.
that, you know, I was really proud of his ability to articulate that boundary. And it's also been like, I feel like I can infer a lot in terms of maybe this is not like, maybe writing about my eldest child is not where my energy should be spent right now, right? Because I feel like he's still also young enough too, where let's say we had a conversation about consent for telling a story. That's I don't know how you say that when somebody is 9. But when you were asking the question, I thought a lot about, right, like the work that I'm working on right now involves like my teenage years and stories about my parents and my brother. And I'm really lucky, like in the sense that my family's like, write what you need to write, go do what you need to do, we love you, but still feeling really private about it, right? Like protective. And I had the best experience last year. I went to a workshop that was through Indigenous Nations poets, and I brought a poem that I was really like. Sometimes you know you have to work on something, and you don't want to work on it, and so and like the more like, right, those forces are really terrible to be caught between, and it was because I was worried that people wouldn't understand what I was trying to say about my family. And really like, and I didn't understand until I was in workshop, like crying my eyes out about it, that I needed to be there with other Indigenous writers who were my readers for that poem, right? Where they understood, you know, all the different forces that I was trying to not speak to, but that my speaker was embodying in that poem. And I had one of the readers talk about it with me afterwards, and she was like, I hear that you're protective. It comes through. You can say this. And it was so freeing. I couldn't revise that poem until then. I didn't want to read it out loud. And I'm like, I got to get to work. I've got stuff to do. So finding freedom through that sense of community and relationship has been really important to me.
I think that's so amazing. You know, when I first started writing right out of college, I was in a lot of workshops, and there weren't that many people of color or Asians, and I had the luck to meet up with other Asian Americans who ended up putting together the Asian American Writers Workshop. And it was workshopping my work with them that helped me to understand that line of how much I want to tell and how much people should understand. And that's something that I never got until I had that workshop. And I think that might be a little bit about what you're talking about, Annie. It's like, you know, there's a certain experience you want to share, but you don't want to tell it. You want to assume that people will actually have a little knowledge, right?
Right. It
makes
yeah, because that allows you to. Oh, yeah, because if you get to trust that people are bringing in some experience or knowledge, instead you don't feel like you're self-objectifying, right? I'm no longer an object lesson on the page. My family's not an object lesson on the page. Instead, they're just people.
People, exactly.
Yeah.
That's lovely. And the idea that you are, on the one hand, you could be writing as an ambassador to people who are outside of the circle, but it sounds like, at least in that particular poem, you were targeting a circle that you were part of, that you were within the circle. So that's really interesting.
Ronna, did you have anything you want to add before we?
You know, my children are grown, so they will read my work. So sometimes I worry that they're going to read my work. I write a story and I think, oh, I don't mind if strangers read this, or writer friends. I'm really happy for them to read it. But if my children read it, I'm not so happy about it. So, I have those feelings about it.
How do you process that when you come across that?
When I come across it, I actually I try not to censor myself, and I just write what I'm writing, and I figure if they read it, they'll, we'll discuss it or we won't discuss it, whatever. I know 2 of my children will read. I have 3 children. 2 of them will read what I write, my books, and then the third doesn't, he's just not that interested. It's nothing that I take personally. He has other interests, so.
He has other interests besides your work. How dare he?
I know.
How
No,
dare he?
it's all right. It's better that way. But no, it's something I try not to censor myself again, but I do think about it. You know, I think, would I talk to my children in this way? Would I talk to them about these things? Sometimes I wouldn't, but it's easier to put it in a story.
Okay. So what are some of the things that, before Ching-In, you mentioned you were working on some difficult topics right now. Can you talk a little bit about that? The reason why I ask is because I started a story like 30 years ago, a novel, and it was not the right time to be starting that story. Like people just didn't have any understanding of systemic racism or anything like that. So I was like running into walls, sort of. And you know, a couple years ago, I started working on this novel again, and it's almost done.
Yay.
But how I often wonder, like, it was a difficult subject to work on with, but maybe could have been a way that I had worked on it and not waited 30 years. Do you know, like, I wonder, like, should I have really, should have worked on it? I don't know. What are your responses?
Well, actually, my response is related to the last question. So I don't have like trouble with the kids or my partner, although it is complicated to be writing with somebody because she's also an artist and she writes sometimes. So, you know, like I have to sometimes have sensitivity about writing about, and I often use like found words in my writing. And so in the past, I have used like found words from her with her permission, but you know, like there was one time she had feelings about it because it hadn't been published, and you know, like, and the piece that I wrote found publication, and so you know, so like there's those complications as well. But the ones that I have like more complicated feelings are about writing about my parents, you know, and also knowing that that especially my father, you know, will see everything that I post, for instance, on social media, and I don't particularly want to censor myself in that way or like not share things, but you know, like things like that, or things that you know, like that my partner has experienced around negotiating around the children, you know, so things like that I might not feel like I'm able to write about publicly in a very explicit way. And then, you know, how does that show up in the writing? Because, you know, like for instance, like my editor might say like this, you can expand this, but I really can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Annie, how about you?
For writing, you know, I think the nicest surprise has been like the writing I was telling you I was putting off doing, right? Like I had a lot of resistance to. I didn't want to do it because I was writing about things that made me feel alone. Right? And like the idea, like, oh, I am going to be writing, and it's a commitment to not just like doing the physical writing of being alone, but I'm going to write and I'm going to feel alone again, and that's going to suck. And I think the thing that I have been most heartened by is that just because I was writing about aloneness didn't mean I had to be alone, right? Like the readers I was telling about it. And the freedom that comes from telling a lonely story when you're bolstered up by your community is really like maybe that wasn't something that was there 30 years ago. So maybe now is the right time because you do have community, right? And leaning into trusting that there are those people there who want to hear what you have to say. And they're also interested in being with you in the process of finding out the way to write it.
It's very, very effective reasoning for finding a writer's community right there. Like, that's
For sure.
beautiful. Like, just lovely.
Ronna, how about you?
Well, I think, regarding what you said about not being able to write what you 30 years ago, I think that sometimes there are right times in the writer's life to write about subjects, that for some reason, like, I haven't been ready to write about certain things at certain times in my life, and then later I'm able to, or I see, I have a story and I see it from a different perspective, with distance, and again with fresh eyes. So I think that in a way, as a writer, you have to kind of listen to yourself. If you're not ready to write something at a certain point, maybe you have to let it go and go on to something else. On the other hand, sometimes when I find a lot of resistance, I had a teacher who once said, if there's something that you really don't want to write about, it may be that it's the thing you really need to write about. So, you have to kind of juggle it and judge for yourself. But I do think that there are times where it's the right time to write about a subject and other times where it's not the right time.
Anybody out in the audience have questions for our people? You're welcome to put them in the chat and we will ask them live. That's what live is all about.
So in the meantime, until someone chimes in, Ching-In, you're working on creative nonfiction, correct? And are you working on poetry? Like I'm hearing like more and more, it used to be like if you were a poet, you wrote poetry, right? Or if you're a fiction writer, you wrote fiction. But now there's so much movement, like people are doing all kinds of things. Do you feel, what are you working on, and are you trying new things, and what's it like as in the writer's life in terms of how you explore your writing and what you're capable of doing? Ching-In, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think that what I'm noticing is hybrid writing is a lot more accepted now and encouraged. And I've always been a hybrid writer, and it's just
that play. We want to know about that.
Oh,
the play.
The play.
I wrote that. Actually, I would say that is a true hybrid piece of writing because I wrote it after I read Memoirs of a Geisha. And I was imagining like different responses. So it was fictional, but it was in dialogue. And then it was also poetic in terms of, I think, the use of language and the use of the page. And I actually went to an MFA program, the University of California at Riverside. And it really encouraged us to take classes cross-genre. And it was half writing for the performing arts and half creative writing. And one of the cool things about the program when I went there is you could have something staged. The first year you were there, I think they gave you a stage reading. And then the second year they actually put it on. And it was all students, directing and acting in it. And so that piece actually got staged. And that actually taught me a lot. That process taught me a lot about my writing and writing for performance and listening to even the way other people read the words.
That's cool.
That is really cool. Wow, Riverside. That is really, really cool. How many programs do that? That's the first time I've heard that.
I love interdisciplinary programs.
That is so amazing.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that blows my mind.
I'm just jealous. That sounds really cool.
Jealousy.
I love it.
That's wonderful. How about you, Ronna?
What I'm working on now?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm working on some more stories that are kind of continuations of the stories from this book. But I'm also working on a novel that I started about 25 years ago. And, I've written many drafts of this novel, and I keep changing it, but I just felt like it's something I don't want to let go of. I just want to see if I can, bring it up to the level where it needs to be and if I could say what I want to say. So that's what I'm working on. And I have been in writers groups, and I was in one wonderful writers groups that we did by Zoom. One of the people in the group lived in Geneva. And so I did, submit some of this novel, and they gave me some really helpful suggestions. So that's what I'm working on. I also write essays sometimes. I've written blogs for Psychology Today. So that's, you know,
You're
I
like
write
all
about-
over the place.
All
It's
over-
like,
yeah,
like,
girl,
you
go
know,
here and
here
here,
and
here and here.
I
Well,
just want to
trying
draw your
different
attention.
things.
Ronna can't see this comment, so I just want to draw her
Oh.
attention to it. Nancy Ludmerer said, "I particularly relate to Ronna's comment about the right time to write about a subject. I think it can take years sometimes."
Thank you. Yes, I think that's true.
Yeah, you know,
So-
it's funny because I also feel that
Thank
the
you,
book
Nancy.
that I'm working on is better because I'm working on it now than it would have been if I had written it back then. So there's that.
Right. Well, also for me, some of the stories and Artifacts and Other Stories I wrote a long time ago, and I completely revised them. You know, it was amazing to me. I mean, I had an editor who looked at it and made suggestions, but I also saw things that I didn't put in at first, but now I was sort of ready to put into the stories. So it was really an interesting process.
Nice. And Annie, are you working on purely poetry, or are you also diversifying like everybody on this?
Let's see. Well, I think I have another project going right now where I'm doing an art writing fellowship with Inuit Art Quarterly.
Neat.
And it's so cool. It's wonderful, right? To be able to be working in a different process where
Yes.
like the constraints are different, the form is different. And it feels like it's very much feeding the poetry in the sense that, right, with art writing, the whole thing is to give your time and attention to the work in front of you and to be present with it. And so it's just been so much fun to be working on that little side project.
That's amazing. That
Really
sounds
cool.
so interesting. Carol West said, "Interesting to hear about process and is enjoying the commonality amongst the participants and honoring that you've had a novel cooking for 25 years.
Oh, thank you, Carol. Carol and I went to grammar school together.
Aw.
And
Oh my God.
That's so cool.
So I'm
Thanks for
really
coming,
happy
Carol.
that you're here, Carol. I
That's
appreciate
so
your
cool.
comment.
Amazing. You guys, this is ridiculous, but we are at the end of our hour, and I don't even know where the time went at all. And I have to very quickly talk about this actually very cool opportunity that ButterDocs is giving us. And I know it sounds like, oh, now it's an ad, but it's not really an ad. It's actually a really cool opportunity for writers who are collaborating, because sometimes writers need to collaborate. Like you might collaborate with your editor or your agent or something like that. And so they've created this platform that is solving all the problems of Scrivener and Google Docs. And they wanted to offer to anybody who's watching or anybody who's interested that on Wednesday, October 25th, they're doing a launch of the product among the writing community, among the creative writing community. And they're looking for 3 groups of panelists to respond to the project in a panel that will be then like broadcast. So it's publicity basically, and you get to try the product. And if you're interested, all you have to do is go to butterdocs.com and select Pen Parentis from your drop-down menu of where you heard about it from, and then they will give you this product. Presumably, they will let you test it for free. So that is butterdocs.com, which is butterdocs.com. And so if you're interested in that kind of thing, that's what you can do. And also, I want to thank again Dreamers Creative Writing Magazine, and of course NISCA and LMCC and the NEA and the DeGroat Foundation and the Poetry Foundation for all of their help. And Claudette, we still see you in the front row. Thank you.
And I want to quickly just let everyone know that next month we meet on October 10th. Our theme will be environment, land, and climate. We have Jen Stever, a poet, Virginia Hartman, fiction and essayist, and Corbin Addison, a novelist. So
And it's going to be great.
Please see you then.
Yes. And you can also subscribe. Now I'm a child. You can subscribe. But seriously, like there's a subscribe button on YouTube. And so youtube.com/Pen Parentis, subscribe. And you get to see all of these things once a month. They just drop into your inbox. You do it while you're cooking. You do it while you're walking on your treadmill or whatever people do. That's it. This is the whole thing. Everybody say goodbye. These are amazing, amazing
Thanks
writers.
for being here.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being here, everyone.